Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I want to talk to you about drones, and I'm going to have a lot of drone footage for you, but a little bit later in the video. I got some nice shots of Dallas and me and other cool things, but for now we're going to swap back to Call of Duty. Drones are serious business, and as you can see from Twitter and some of the drone photography here, I've been learning this firsthand. Regular citizens can now, with no training, have access to very powerful spy tools, smuggling tools too, and they're not even that expensive. Before, I always imagined drones as being way too expensive for most people. They were military technology, you had to build your own, you had to get these Arduinos working, you had to shell out like $5K, but like most technologies, it gets cheaper and more available over time, and me acting like an old man just kind of forgot about that, and I just always assumed they would be arbitrarily expensive, or maybe at worst they would end up being a niche hobby, kind of like people that like to fly RC planes or build, model cars and stuff like that. And I knew that the government had powerful drones just flying over all the time. They say they don't fly them over the US, but I doubt that. They're difficult to detect anyway. They fly them overseas, constantly spying, and the thought of like government drones would always trigger me like,
the government's using the drones to spray chemtrails that makes all the frogs gay.
but the idea of regular citizens having these and flying them around just wasn't in my head. It's just not something I generally considered except for a few hobbyists. But what if I could get a drone for less than the price of a new console? Well, obviously I did, and I wanted to show you some of the things I filmed with it and why this is a concerning issue for me. This is one of the very first things I filmed with my drone. This was at my brother-in-law's house in Mansfield, Texas. I just picked it up and took it straight into the air. And I'm not like trying to spy on people, even though it's very easy. You can actually see me in the blue in the bottom right-hand corner. I just got it for Christmas and I put it out on the street in the front yard, and I'm like, I want to take it off and fly the drone and see what it's going to do. And as I'm flying it, I'm realizing I can see everybody's house and everybody's backyard and everybody's pool, and I could very, very easily spy on all of my brother-in-law's neighbors, or what they're doing in their hot tub, or what they're cooking in the backyard, or a lot of really inappropriate stuff. I didn't do that. Once I was done flying, after a couple of minutes, I realized I should be doing a lot less of that, but it was immediately concerning to me how easy that would be to do and how clear and crisp of a picture I got. Now, at that height, the drone is loud enough for you to hear for the most part. Some people might miss it, but it wasn't like super stealthy. These things sound like gigantic flies. They're a little bit hard to hear. The next day, I decided to take it out to the park and try and film some birds and get some nice aerial photography and learn how the drone works. Now, for the most part, this is very innocent, benign footage filming people in public. There's nothing inherently wrong about it, except that even trying to get the good aerial shots I wanted, I still ended up getting people's backyards, and the people below at this height couldn't hear the drone, and they probably had no idea they were being filmed. In the United States, you can film anything that happens on a public street, in a public park, in a public area, and you can record. You don't have to have people's permission to record. You may need permission to monetize it, or to turn it into a documentary, or anything that you're going to sell, but just to record them for personal use, you don't need permission, but it still makes people uncomfortable. Speaking of recording people, the drone I got, which I'll talk about later, has an automatic follow mode that can detect bodies, and it can also detect faces. Here I'm not piloting the drone, I'm just walking away from it, and I'm just testing this feature out, and the drone follows me wherever I go. I did decide to set it up and try it. It'll do this at a much higher distance than this. I can get it to work up to about 200 feet reliably, but this gives you a better idea of what's going on. It can also follow groups of people, which is interesting, and I can automatically make it film at different angles, and I'm not really piloting it. The drone's just kind of doing its own thing here, and I'm along for the ride, which makes me wonder if it could follow any person anywhere. It probably could follow a lot of people in a lot of situations, and this is just consumer grade technology. This isn't really that crazy or fancy, and again, I'm going to talk about the drone I got later, which was like a $400 drone, but imagine a government drone or a higher end professional or like business to business model. You could follow one person in a crowd at a height from which they would never even know you're watching. You could follow cars, you could follow other aircraft, you could follow animals. You could just set it to automatically track a whole lot of stuff from a distance so far away that you'll never hear the propellers going, and that's very concerning when it comes to surveillance state or just people being pervs. Here's a nice shot that I got in downtown Dallas, which again was legal, I'll talk about later. If I wanted to, I could have gotten much closer to this triangular shaped building in front front of me and spied on each and every individual person in their offices to see what they've got going on. I didn't do that because it's not legal and it's rude, but just an idea of how easy it is to put the drone that close to the buildings. All I had to do was hold forward and get closer, and I could just spy on people in skyscrapers. Easy peasy. And finally today we have some of my favorite clips. These are clips of downtown Dallas, which are surprisingly legal. It was just barely outside of the no-fly zone. There were nice clearings and empty parking lots, so it didn't fly over people. There weren't private or restricted airspaces. So even this here, being a busy part of downtown Dallas, being a place where you wouldn't think there would be a lot of drones or aircraft going around, I was just able to pull up to an empty parking lot and take off and zip around. Well, not empty, but devoid of people, I should say, and zip around and fly kind of whatever I wanted. Impressive? Yep. Beautiful? Yep. Powerful? Yep. Invasive? Maybe. Legal? Surprisingly, which again is really concerning. These are beautiful shots. I love drone photography. I love doing this kind of thing, but it concerns me that just about anybody can pick up and do this at any time. Since drones are marketed and sold as toys, basically nobody knows about ramifications or regulations when it comes to using them. Some of the higher end drones are marketed as cameras or professional tools or something, but even those are bought by people like me as big boy toys. So when it comes to getting into flying a drone, it's surprising to a lot of people, myself included, that there are a lot of federal and state regulations that you need to be aware of to do it legally. Many of these regulations I broke on day one, having no idea about them, and I'm not showing you any footage of that because I know how trolls on YouTube work and I don't really want to get in trouble. But for Christmas, I got a DJI Spark drone, which is this little guy you see here on the screen. It costs $400 for the base model, and that's at the lower end of professional drone cameras. There are loads of toy drones that range from like $50, $75, $100, $200 kind of, that can fly really high. They have cameras and they can do a lot of stuff, but generally speaking, their batteries are shorter, they're louder, they're crappier cameras, they're not stabilized, they're not as nice. The DJI Spark drone is kind of the entry level into the big boy drones. It's kind of the cheapest like cinematographer, vlogger, YouTuber, big boy toy that you can get, and of course those can go up into thousands of dollars, but at $400 that's less than the price of a game console, less than the price of a cell phone, less than the price of most TVs. It is not cheap, but it is cheaper than something this powerful should be. So all of the clips that you saw I got on a drone that cost $400 or maybe less if you go from some places with bargains or whatever. And when I got it, the very first thing I did is I just skimmed through the instructions super fast and I'm like, oh, okay, I got it. And it says, don't break federal regulations. And I'm like, whatever, because I ignore that because the cell phone charger I got, the calculator, my phone, a stupid bed tag, all of these things have federal regulations associated with them, your keyboard and mice, microphones, microwaves, and you never read them because you're not an idiot and you know how those things work and you know how not to break the law and you know how not to be a bad guy and they don't really apply to you. Well, I didn't read any of the drone regulations, so I just took it off and I flew it up to about 1,000 feet over Dallas. Maybe it was like 900 feet or so. And I shared the footage on Twitter and was immediately told that I should delete it for legal reasons. Some of my less than nice fans decided to report me to the FAA instantly, hoping that I would get a $250,000 fine. But the drone that I have for $400 can fly up to 1,500 feet, and the legal limit is 400 feet. So it can go, and most of the shots you saw there were at about 400 feet, maybe a little bit less. So it can go almost 4 times higher than the legal limit, or 4 times higher than anything you saw, quite easily. And this isn't even a bigger drone. Like, bigger drones can go even higher than that, which is crazy that just like you are ready to break federal regulations right out of the box. And don't get me wrong on this, I'm not about hard limitations on these drones, because if the GPS glitches out and it thinks you're above 400 feet when you're not, it'll do weird things, or auto tracking. And it's nice that you can buy things that can go higher, but there's basically no public awareness about this issue, which concerns me. And there's several rules, a lot of them actually, about drawing drones. Some of them are straightforward, but some of them I didn't know. They're all set forth by the FAA. First thing is you're required to register your drone. You literally have to register it with the FAA. Even if it's just a toy. Some of the like the cheap like $50 drones that you get, you have to register them. I think it's over a certain weight limit, but the vast majority of drones require federal registration. You can't fly them above 400 feet, at least not without a special license. You can't fly them within 5 miles of airports or other restricted airspaces, which in most big cities there's airports nearby, which is why I can't film in a lot of Dallas. No flying over sporting events. That's not just giant ones like Cowboy Stadium or whatever. That's smaller ones, that's school events, anything where there's a lot of people. No flying over fires, emergencies, disasters, shootings, anything crazy like that. It's basically like don't get in the way of rescue personnel. Also, no flying over big groups of people or cars, intentionally that is. And this rule is a little bit more loose, but the general idea is you don't fly it over highways, you don't fly it on streets, you don't fly it over big groups of people, you don't fly it anywhere where it could likely fall down and hit people. No flying drunk, that's pretty obvious, and no intentionally spying on people. And that one's a little bit more vague. When you take a drone up in the air, it's going to spy on people, period. It's almost unavoidable, but you're not supposed to like intentionally stalk or harass or spy on people. There's more interesting rules about commercial use, especially in Texas. Texas rules are very, very strict on commercial use. And at one point, the FAA said no posting any drone footage to YouTube if your channel is monetized, and then that rule changed, and they change it back, and then they change it back again. And there's constitutional issues in court because people are buying toys and accidentally violating federal regulations with toys and getting $250,000 fines, and it becomes a constitutional right of should I be allowed to fly versus not. The enforcement in some areas is basically zero. In other areas where I live in Dallas and Texas, it's much more strict, and these rules are changing often. A lot of these rules have changed in the last 3 or 4 years, at least based on my reading, which is kind of uncommon for federal regulations. Normally I don't roll over that really fast, so it's difficult to keep up. Normally I'm not a big fan of burdensome regulations. Yes, regulations are important in some industries. They're good. They're protections that are here to help people. But when it comes to my dealing with them, at least, a lot of them are arbitrarily onerous or burdensome or difficult to deal with. And I really don't like especially detailed or strict regulations. Guidelines are more my jam. And I really didn't like the strange and difficult to understand commercial regulations when it comes to drones. But damn, do these things ever need to be regulated? Like, as much as I would love to just fly my drone everywhere, I know that these things need to be regulated for reasons such as drone strikes at airports. I had a subscriber of mine, Ricky, who's like, yeah, when I land my planes, I don't want to have to worry about crashing into drones and blowing out an engine and then crashing into the ground and dying. Helicopter pilots, small aircraft pilots, big aircraft pilots, they're all worrying about drones hitting their airplane and getting messed up. So we don't want any of that. We don't want them falling on people or cars. Some of them go anywhere from half an ounce to like 55 pounds. And imagine if you had a huge 55-pound drone that fell out of the sky at God only knows how high and fell down and hit a person. They would die, or multiple people, or crush a car, or do something just absolutely tremendous. They're super easy to use to spy on people. So you have home privacy issues, you have business privacy issues. One business could use it to spy on another business very, very easily. There's smuggling issues. I do remember reading a story about a very enterprising drug smuggling ring that bought one of the more expensive drones, and they were flying cocaine over the border like a pound at a time and just dropping it off. And you know, drones aren't cheap and you have to recharge them and whatnot, but a pound of cocaine is a pretty good amount of cocaine. And you can just make that trip a couple times a day and the border control can't do anything about it. There's issues with air traffic clutter. Just in general, you don't want to have drones zipping around all the time messing up air traffic. And wildlife safety with protected birds, with protected species, with things that are noise sensitive, with screwing up habitats and environments and chasing animals away. There are reasons for this. So I love my toy. I love filming with my toy. I wish there were less restrictions on commercial filming and uses, and I have to be very safe about that. But God damn, they need regulations. Like, to think that I can go out and for less than the price of a video game console get a camera drone that I could use to spy on any of my neighbors, that I could crash it into airplanes, that I could spy on businesses, or I could probably rig it to drop off small payloads either for smuggling or for killing people with very little effort, is a shocking thing. And it was really, really eye-opening. Not to like the big government drone, but just how wrong this can go in the hands of civilians. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.
The government drones are spraying chemtrails everywhere. Ain't you seen the snow that don't even melt? God damn it, why are all my frogs gay? The government drones are spraying chemtrails everywhere. The snow don't melt. Got extra rainbows in the air, and all my goddamn frogs is turning gay. What am I gonna teach my kids about amphibians when all my goddamn frogs is gay? The government drones, they're watching me all the time. That was a terrible one.